Okay, today we're going to dive into a social analysis of a nearly forgotten American ritual. And it's all centered on something most of us, absolutely dread, paying taxes. But what's so fascinating is what it reveals about this trade-off we're always making between community and convenience. We're going to see how technology didn't just change a process, it completely dismantled a public spectacle.
So think about the last time you filed your taxes. It was probably a pretty quiet individual experience, right? Just you and a screen. An efficient but kind of solitary task. Well, that whole isolated feeling is actually a very modern thing. As you can see here, just a couple of decades ago, the experience was the total opposite. It was loud, it was public, and believe it or not, it was communal.
I know. It sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? A party? For taxes? But this isn't just some weird, isolated story. It's the whole phenomenon we're digging into today. For decades, that shared deadline of April 15th created this unintentional nationwide social gathering.
So, how in the world did this happen? Well, it all comes down to a really simple, really shared human experience: procrastination. I mean, we've all been there. Before the internet, millions of us would wait until the absolute last minute to mail in our paper tax returns, and this created a massive collective rush to post offices all across the country right before that midnight deadline.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from Paul Smith, who was a Postal Service veteran for 40 years, just captures the spirit perfectly. He talks about these huge lines of cars, with postal workers literally walking between them with buckets to collect returns, just to keep things moving. The atmosphere wasn't dread. It was the shared, last-minute, chaotic energy. And here's the crucial point. From a social analyst's perspective, anytime you get a large, captive audience, you get an opportunity. Businesses, entertainers, activists, they all realized that on the night of April 15th, they had thousands of people stuck in line with absolutely nowhere to go. And, well, they definitely took full advantage. All right, so let's really deconstruct this. From a historical point of view, this whole thing wasn't an accident. It was actually the predictable outcome of a very specific set of circumstances, technological and bureaucratic, that created the perfect storm for a giant public get-together. This timeline here, it shows you all the key ingredients. First, 1913, the income tax creates the job to be done. Then, in 1955, the deadline gets set to April 15th, which basically synchronizes the entire country's procrastination schedule. This combo right here created a nearly 30-year golden age for the tax day party, a time when paper filing was pretty much the only option. Now, e-filing showing up in '86 was the beginning of the end, but because people adopted it so slowly, the tradition had this long, slow fade instead of just stopping overnight.
And this slide just brilliantly shows how wild these events got. I mean, we are talking about full-on carnivals. You could pay $1 to dunk an off-duty IRS agent for charity. Talk about a great way to vent some frustration. You had live bands, casinos handing out freebies, even a sparkling pink Playboy booth in Philadelphia offering massages. It was this bizarre, organic, and just uniquely American spectacle. This quote comes from the postmaster in Lawrence, Kansas. For decades, a local band called the Alfred Packer Memorial String Band would show up and play for all the procrastinators. And that just says it all, right? In the middle of this stressful, bureaucratic chore, people were actually finding a moment of collective joy, of community.
But, like a lot of 20th century rituals, this one was destined to go extinct. And the thing that killed it wasn't a new law or some big cultural shift, it was technology. The digital revolution that reshaped pretty much everything else in our world would quietly and completely dismantle this public gathering.
This chart tells the entire story in one glance. Today, filing your taxes by mail is this tiny little exception. The overwhelming majority of us, we file electronically from the privacy of our own homes. That shared physical space, the post office, has been almost completely removed from the equation. Just think about the scale of that number, 94%. From a sociological standpoint, a behavioral shift that's this fast and this comprehensive is, well, it's staggering. In less than a generation, the physical gathering point for millions of people just vanished. And with it, the entire ecosystem of the tax day party just evaporated. So at the end of the day, the technology didn't just change how we filed taxes. It fundamentally changed the social nature of the whole experience. It took a public, synchronous ritual and turned it into a private, asynchronous task. No crowds, no lines, no party.
And this brings us to the real heart of our analysis. The disappearance of the tax day party isn't just some quirky, nostalgic story. It's a perfect case study of a fundamental trade-off that really defines modern life.
this constant negotiation we're all making between convenience and community.
So let's weigh the scales here. On one side, what we gained is undeniable. It's more efficient, it's more convenient, and it's definitely more private. But what was the cost? As this slide shows, we lost a shared experience. We lost a quirky public ritual. And we lost a moment of spontaneous community. We basically traded this messy, unpredictable human connection for streamlined, isolated efficiency.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This pattern of technology offering us convenience, but at the cost of a communal experience, it's everywhere you look. I mean, think about movie theaters versus streaming services, or shopping malls versus online retail. The story of the tax day party is really a reminder to ask ourselves, as our lives get more and more efficient, what other accidental, spontaneous forms of community might we be leaving behind?